All right, so now we're getting into doing some Bondo work, some patching, cleaning up this fender here, and we're going to work on the back side where the holes are also, and so that we have some material back there to support the little holes when we put the Bondo in. And I've already started sanding this, and I'm going to get I want to get it down as much Bondo off of it as I can, and then I'll add filler to it as I need to get it straightened out. So let's get busy on that. I won't show you all the small details and all the dust and the dirt and the sanding, but we'll get this thing started. All right, I got the first layer of mud on this one, and then I set it down so that it could cure while I put mud on the second one. And now I'll take the second one, set it aside, let it cure, and then start sanding that one over there. All right, so I'm on the second layer of mud, and so I'm getting close to where I can start doing more of the detail work. But if you look right here, you can see where this Bondo is a low spot here, and this is on the edge of the fender, and so I've got to add a little bit more mud there, and a little bit more mud here. That way I can get a better edge to the fender where it's on top. And once I get that taken care of, then I'll start blending this in, because I might have to add more mud to this area to get it to all feather in. And of course, you know, I knocked it down with the heavy stuff, which is like 80 grit, and then as I get finer and finer touches up on it, I'll start moving towards 120. I'll do most of my work probably on 120, and then the final step will be around a 300, and I'll just basically breeze over that. And that should put me pretty close to being able to put that high fill primer down. And then the high fill primer is going to require that we sand that primer to get it smooth, to get the orange peel out of it, etc. The finer details now. One of the things that I experimented with, and don't dog me on the internet about this, but I went online and I says, okay, how can I thin out body filler? And they said there's, you know, filler honey and some other things that are made specifically for that. And then they also said that you can sometimes use lacquer thinner and acetone, depending on the makeup of the filler. And so I have no idea. It doesn't say on the can. So I used some lacquer thinner, because that's what I had, and it thinned out really nice. And what I did is there's some areas here where there's some pretty heavy pitting, and I'm pretty sure that the primer is going to cover that anyway, but this will help me also blend it in so that I don't have any transitions or seams. And so I kind of like the way that went on, and I'm going to knock this down now with the 120, and I'm also going to go over everything with the 120 to knock off any of that rust converter that I still had on there, etc. And then I'll get these cleaned up, and if I need some more detail work, some dents, some dings, stuff like that, it'll be small minor things, and then I'll get these cleaned up so that we can put primer on them. Okay, getting close to finishing things up. I've basically ran 120 over this. This feels real good here. I don't feel any transitions, don't see any transitions. That looks good. Now, there's some places I'm debating on. There's the pitting's pretty deep, but I'm almost certain that most of the high fill primer is going to fill that in. But I think I might put some thin filler over the really bad places, and that way I don't have to sweat it so much in order to get the the primer perfect. So that fender is just about done. I made a statement before about thinning out the Bondo, and it said to use acetone or lacquer thinner, and I had good results with that. Now I also have tried using basically fiberglass resin to thin it out to make it more pliable, and that works too. However, that resin makes it hard as a rock. I mean, when you have to take and sand this down to get it to contour to the panel that you're working on, it's almost impossible. It's like trying to sand cement. So if you can avoid using the resin, that's great, because it makes the Bondo so much harder, which is more likely to crack, by the way. But if you can use the chemical that evaporates quickly, that thins it out, it's less likely to harden it and promote cracking. The only thing you do have to worry about, though, is on those resins that evaporate quickly, the high VOCs, is that it could potentially crack as it's drying. So you want to use as little as possible. But like I said, though, the adding resin, fiberglass resin, to your Bondo does work. However, it makes it really hard. Now, I would definitely recommend adding resin to your fiber-filled epoxy, where it has fiberglass fibers in it, because it has to support more weight and more distortion, and adding that little bit of resin would definitely help to do that, and it would make it harder. And I mean, that with fiberglass, that's what you're trying to do, is you're trying to make a durable covering, versus Bondo, which is just blending everything together. Okay? All right. Next, okay, I've gone through and I've looked for the heavy pitting and maybe some dips and stuff. I outlined that in marker. That way I can do a skim coat on the light areas. Here, 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 etc., etc. You got to have a method to this madness, because if you don't, it's going to eat you up. Because every time you start cleaning it up to get it ready for primer, you're going to find out that there's another bug in it. Okay, so go ahead and mark everything up and work on it methodically and knock it out one piece at a time. Okay, looky. I'm getting almost to the end of detailing these, getting them ready for a primer. I'm going to, I've got skim coats over all the heavy pitting, and truthfully, once I get this sanded down and blended in, we should be ready for primer. The only place I'm going to spend a little more time on is this area right here, because it was really rusted and pitted in this area. And so I'm going to clean this up, and I will invest some time to get this pretty close to perfect so that it looks good from the outside, and before I primer it. Okay, so that's where we're at now, and I'll finish sanding this, get it prepped up, and we'll put a couple coats of primer on it. Now I've done everything at 120. I believe I got all the dings and dents out, so all I got to do is clean up around a few holes, and then I'm going to go over everything. Got to clean up around this cutout here. I'm going to go over everything with a 320, just to do the final feathering, and then we'll wipe it down and see how close we are to putting some primer on this. But that's basically where I'm at. Everything looks pretty close. I gotta dig out some leftover Bondo in a couple other places, wipe it down, make sure all the little crumbs are off of it, etc., etc. All right, so let's get down to the dirty details. Okay, I've got them hung on my car lift. I wiped them down the first time with some lacquer thinner. But you gotta be careful with that lacquer thinner. It's so hot, it'll take off paint and it'll actually affect the Bondo if you're not careful. So I wiped it down quickly with lacquer thinner, and then I wiped it down again with something more neutral, which is alcohol. And I'll wipe it down again, blow it down, wipe it again with alcohol before I paint it. But basically, I got it hung on there, and I'm draining the water out of the moisture out of my air compressor and getting it ready so that we can shoot some primer on here and get it set up. Get it going so that we can get this thing painted. Start driving it again. Well, we're getting back to it. I'm going to be getting set up to do our painting. And I started out with almost a full can of this body filler, and it's what, 1 quart basically body filler. And if you look at the fenders, there's not a whole lot of Bondo or body filler on there, you know, just a little bit skimmed over. However, I've gone through almost this whole quart. And do you want to know where the rest of this filler is? It's no longer on the fenders. It's actually, during the sanding process, is basically filled up my nose and sinuses and turned into Bondo boogers. So I basically have taken this product out of the can and inhaled it over the last few days. And if I was able to take and figure out how to recycle my Bondo boogers, I would basically be able to save the world and stop global warming and all those horrible environmental things that we are told about. But anyway, it's probably a good idea to use a mask. However, I'm normally out in the open outside, so I don't get that much of it or have to breathe that much of it. But yeah, this is, when you do body work, the Bondo or the body filler goes up your nose. Some other things, I spoke to you about draining the water out of the tank, and I've got plenty of these throwaway canisters with desiccant, and also I've got reusable desiccant here. So just remember that desiccant, if it absorbs moisture and turns color, all you have to do is take it out, put it in a nice dish of some sort, and then put it in dry heat, like a dry heat oven or something like that, and it'll cook the moisture back out of it, and you can keep reusing this stuff. So you don't have to keep throwing it away. You can actually get it and reuse it. And that's another thing about recycling, right? Rocky wants to recycle all the time so he can save the world. So Bondo boogers and reusing desiccant, very important. All right, so getting all my tools and stuff ready, I had to take and change some things on the spray paint gun versus my bed liner gun. So I had to move those parts. Got my mask set up and ready over there. got my mixing cups from the Home Depot, and I'm going to be doing a 4-to-1. So I'm at 4 with the base, and I'm going to put 1 part of the hardener activator in there. And I also got these filters. Always use filters. A little bit of crap will ruin your gun. So always use a filter. I got those from Home Depot also. So let's get this stuff ready. I am going to, once I get this mixed, I am going to use a paintbrush and get into the seams over there, and also tucked up underneath. Places that I can't get to with the gun, I'm going to put some in there with a paintbrush, and then we'll flash over that. All right. All right, so I have these primered. Now, I've got drips and runs, but that's where I painted it on with the paintbrush. That's all gonna sand off pretty easy. Sure, it's additional work, but I wanted to make sure that there was primer inside the seam, because if you put seam sealer on there and there's moisture trapped in there, it's a spot for rust. So I wanted to make sure that that was done. So we're gonna let this set up for a day, and then we'll, actually 2 days, it'll be Monday. So we're gonna let this set up, and then we're going to wet sand it and put the seam sealer in there. I'll probably seam sealer it first and then wet sand it. Okay, got these sides done. Everything looks good. Like I said, I got some drips and stuff, but these are on the inside of the panel. I'm not worried about that. And everything that's on the outside, we'll go ahead and wet sand that, get a nice finish to it, and get it ready for color. All right, so I'm done for this video. Got enough time in it, so I'll put this video out, and then the next video we'll have where we do the front valance, and we'll also put color on it. All right. Until next time, Rocky out.